Okay, one of the things I wanted to talk to you today about is one thing that we run into in counseling with people quite a bit. And it seems like a lot of people that think they know a lot really don't. And what happens is they end up making so many mistakes when they do international moves, trying to lower their taxes, picking the wrong, maybe citizenship by investment programs or residency by investment programs. We see a lot of people making mistakes with residency by investment programs, and one of the biggest problems I see, and I see a lot being promoted on the internet, and I did a video not too long ago similar to this, but a lot different. I'm going to go through it with you today on is I think a lot of people are really ignorant the fact that how a lot of these governments in different countries actually track you on taxes. And so many people really don't do their homework. They look at stuff on TV, I think, a lot on countries like Spain, Brazil, Argentina. Of course, Spain is an EU country. It's very developed, but some of these other ones, like Argentina, Brazil, you got places like Bolivia, places like Indonesia that are developing type countries. Most people have this attitude that these countries are kind of corrupt. They're lackadaisical. They don't have ways to track you. Trust me, they've got ways of tracking you, okay? And if you don't like their high taxes, my thing is don't go in there to begin with. This is one of the biggest problems that I see that people end up screwing up on. I'm going to give you a good example right here, okay? The way that most countries can track you, there's several ways they can track you. Number one is most countries have a 183-day rule. Some of them have more than that, some have less than that, okay? The U.S. has got like basically a 4-month rule, okay? So it's a substantial presence test, although you can sometimes stay longer than that. It's a formula. You have to look at the formula, and I've got videos on that. But to play it safe, don't ever go in the U.S. and spend more than 120 days in a calendar year, okay? Most countries, though, have the 183-day rule, which is roughly, a little over 6 months or thereabouts, okay? Now, what you're going to have to do is, if you go in a country, this is what typically immigration, how they track you, okay? Number one is when you go in, there's an entry date and time, and there's an exit date and time, okay? If you exceed whatever their legal time period is, you're obligated to file and pay taxes in that country on your worldwide income. In a lot of countries, not all the countries do that, but countries that tax based on worldwide income, if you live there, they have ways of tracking you. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of, and some countries are more, onto it with computers than others, and there's no way you can keep up with it. Okay, they change all the time. My advice to you is, if you don't like the taxes that a country has, if it's a country that taxes you on worldwide income and you don't like that, go visit the country, but make sure you don't spend more than, except for the U.S. is even shorter. You're looking at 4 months there. I wouldn't spend more than 3 months, okay, or maybe even 2 months without checking out their tax laws, okay? And if you're doing for instance, say a visa, like the Philippines is a good example. You can go back over and over again to the Philippines and keep your residency there just by renewing your visa. It's probably got the most liberal policy of any country in the world. But the Philippines, fortunately, they don't tax you based on worldwide income. They have a territorial tax system to foreigners. So that's one country you don't have to worry about unless they change their tax laws, which could happen. So you need to keep up with that. But the Philippines, you can just go in there and just keep renewing your visa and stay there for long periods of time. And if you want to apply for the SRRV visa, you can do that later. That's one reason I like the residency program. But back to this on the how the countries track you. The U.S. is a good example. Okay, I've got a friend that's a missionary from South Africa. I knew from Panama. And he actually went into the U.S. to visit his family that lived in Texas. And what happened was probably about a year after his trip occurred, he got a notice from the U.S. IRS stating that he owed taxes, or he needed to file for U.S. taxes for whatever year. And to make a long story short, what happened was he entered the U.S., and I forgot exactly what he told me, if they either forgot to stamp the passport, which that is possible, believe it or not, if you get in a conversation with an immigration guy and he just forgets to stamp it, or it didn't show up, because some of these stamps they're not real good. But anyway, it was not put in the computer where he entered and exited, okay? So what happened was months went by and showed that he never left the U.S., okay? So he had a nightmare case. He had to literally go back and he had to show proof where he was on different dates. It was a mess. And this is the type of thing, and don't think that the Mexicos and the places like the Argentinas can't do this. And this is the problem a lot of people have. They think they can't track them, okay? And the problem is they can track you, okay? And I would take every country as if they can track you. My thing is this right here. When you're traveling, stay for short periods of time if you don't know their tax laws. And another thing I would do too is if you're going to these countries, the first rule of thumb I would tell you to do is don't purchase a property in countries that tax worldwide income if you live there, okay? Let me tell you why this is going to be a problem for you, okay? You might be real young now and you like to travel a lot, but what you're going to find out as you get older, you're not going to want to pick up your bags because you looked at your calendar and now you're close to the 183 days. Or if in the U.S., close to the 120-day mark, and you got to get your butt out of there, okay? And this is the problem with a lot of people is they think that they don't know, they're not educated enough. And I would tell you, don't try to break the laws to begin with. Don't try to outsmart them. The key is try to find out what the laws are. And if you don't like paying high taxes, then don't do whatever it takes to where you're going to have to file a tax return in that country, okay? And the problem is most people don't get themselves educated on this. So what I would do is don't buy that house in the country that taxes worldwide income if you live there at least 183 days or the time period that the country has where you're going to have to declare or fill out a tax return, okay? And because what's going to happen is you get closer to the time period that you're supposed to leave to avoid the tax, and you go, oh man, I just don't feel like leaving. I'm sick, or I just don't feel good. Such and such birthday's coming up. I don't want to leave and come back. So you end up staying there, okay? And then next thing you know, you got a nightmare months and months, or even a couple of years later, you got a problem because of that one instance. My whole thing is stick with countries that have territorial tax systems, pure tax haven systems to buy your properties in. Not just for that reason, but let me tell you the other things that you want to look at. Most wealthy expats are not going to, unless they're socialistic, they love socialism, but most wealthy people don't love socialism, okay? But most people that are expats that don't like high taxes and stuff, they're not going to pick the Mexicos, the Argentinas. Believe it or not, I'm going to tell you from my fact, okay? Most people, when they call me and want counseling, when they pick Argentina, Paraguay, Mexico, not always, but I know in most cases that person is not high net worth, okay? Usually the ones that are high net worth, the ones that want to go on the fast track programs, and then instantly. And there are people that don't have that much. They're going for the fast track programs, but they don't like high taxes, and they're trying to do something early to prevent from having that problem later, okay? That's why they're looking at fast track programs to getting citizenship. Now, usually people that are picking the Paraguays, the Chiles, the Brazils, I'm going to tell you almost in every case, those people have little to nothing in assets, okay? And most of them we can't work with anyway because we have a guideline. You got to have an income of at least $100,000 a year income, or your net worth has got to be at least $1 million. We can't work with you because we're not going to do it for free. Most of those people are looking to spend pennies on the dollar, and our company's not going to work with people in that situation. My suggestion with you is go look at our YouTube videos and try to fix your own problem. because you can literally go on our YouTube videos and you can fix it, but we've got 1,000 of them. So you're going to have to take the time out to go through and look at those, because there are residency by investment programs that you don't have to go on the fast track program, that are pure tax savings systems that do have programs that you can that are pure tax savings. But like I said, it's going to take you years to get that passport if you can ever get it. That's the problem. Okay. Now, again, back to this thing about buying properties. Most expats, okay, that are wealthy don't go into Argentina's, Brazil's. They just don't do it. They're avoiding those countries. I'm telling you. And usually when wealthy people don't go and buy in those countries, a lot of times the property prices don't go up a lot, like they have in the Caymans, like they have in St. Bart's, like they have in St. Kitts, because there's no motivation for them to move there. Why do they want to move out of a high tax country into another high tax country? They're trying to avoid that. So they're looking for the territorial tax system type programs like Panama, places like, now Paraguay has a territorial tax system, but it will take you years to get the passport there, okay? And like I said, the ones that you want to avoid in buying properties, okay, is the places like Brazil, Argentina, places like Spain, places in the EU that have high taxes, places now, and you also have to look at two things. St. Kitts, believe it or not, has high taxes, okay? Yeah, they do have high taxes. They have real high corporate taxes, okay? Wish the government would take this away, but you can avoid it anyway. So you really don't have to worry about it. But I think the St. Kitts government is losing a lot of mutual fund business. Why? Because they have a high corporate tax rate that's imposed on mutual fund companies if they come to St. Kitts. You want a lot of money to come into St. Kitts, eliminate that corporate tax rate. Now, you have to remember, most countries can avoid the corporate tax rate anyway in St. Kitts, okay? Because there are only a few type businesses where the government in St. Kitts requires a corporation to be set up. But a lot of them are very wealthy type businesses, insurance, okay? Things like mutual fund companies. So if you want to set up your own insurance company, don't come to St. Kitts to do it, especially if it's a local company, okay? And the way to do it is to buy somewhere else, okay? Now, you can come to St. Kitts, though, and avoid and get your taxes to zero in most cases. Just don't get in one of the industries, which is very few, and don't take your company public in St. Kitts, because those companies are required to set up a corporation too. But you can avoid it by setting up an unincorporated business or live in St. Kitts and have a company outside of St. Kitts that doesn't tax income for their offshore corporations. You can look at our other videos on that. I can go on and on with that. But the point I'm trying to make is don't be buying real estate. Typically, properties don't go up a lot in countries that tax worldwide income. They go up more in the territorial tax countries and the pure tax saving countries. If you don't believe me, look at places like Bermuda. Go there and look at how much the real estate has gone up. Go to the Cayman Islands. Come to St. Kitts. I hear people complain all the time the properties in St. Kitts are actually expensive. Well, that's actually, it's true and it's not true. If you compare it with Texas, no, it's not. It is expensive, okay? But if you compare it with, it's expensive. You compare it with Texas. If you compare it with the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, no, it's incredibly cheap. Compare it with St. Bart's, it's incredibly, incredibly cheap, okay? But St. Kitts' properties are going to go through the roof, just the fact they don't have an income tax. Now, by having a corporate income tax in St. Kitts can actually help. And let me tell you why. Most countries don't have to have a corporation in St. Kitts anyway. How does that benefit you? Okay, number one is when you come to St. Kitts, due to the fact they do have a corporate income tax that some people have to pay. Most people don't, okay? But everything else is cheap in St. Kitts compared to other pure tax saving countries. Why? Well, countries have to listen to me, folks. Every country has taxes, okay? There's no country in the world that has zero taxes, okay? They have zero income tax, maybe zero corporate tax, But there is no country in the world that I have seen that has zero taxes. They might have what's called import duties or VAT or whatever, but folks, it's a tax, okay? And some of the places that have import duties are extremely high, it can be 50%, okay? But due to the fact it's based on what you're spending or the items that you're bringing in the country, if you're wealthy, it's hitting you very little to begin with, okay? And even if it's 50%, because it's based on what you're spending and what you're bringing in the country, not what you make, okay? So you have to look at that. But the point I'm trying to make is the fact that if you want to be in places that where real estate is going to go up high, go to countries that have territorial tax systems and have pure tax haven statuses. And this is how you do it. If you want to know more on this, folks, go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and just ask for some help. And I would like to hear from you. If you got a question or comment, put it below. And if you want more videos like this, you can get them automatically. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the right of your screen right here. You'll get new videos automatically as they come out. And I look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care.